call the Board of Elections for April 15th, 2021 meeting to order.
Good morning, Michael Anderson, Chief Clerk Voter Registration. Few items on the agenda today, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. First up is the approval of the 2021 Municipal Primary Ballot. I did email everybody a copy of that and did make copies for you. Very similar ballot format as in the past. This election, we will have 3 different ballot types, nonpartisan, Democrat, and Republican. We have a special election that is on all 3 ballots, and we do have 3 constitutional amendments and 1 referendum question. With that, the only real difference this year from previous years is in the, I don't know if you probably can see it on this, but in the top right-hand corner, this will indicate what type of ballot it will be. So the state requires us to say if it's a mail-in ballot, absentee ballot, or an election day ballot. They're all exactly the same ballot, just have to have it marked as such. So that's where that will be. That is the only change that we had to go through from previous ballots. So I just asked approval of the ballot as submitted.
Michael, I don't see where you're referencing. You're
Sorry,
on
I
mute.
was muted.
Yeah.
So what happens, Commissioner, is we have to submit these ballots to the Department of State for them to pre-approve, basically. On your copies, I do not believe, I think it's just the date in that top right-hand corner.
Oh, okay.
So one of the suggestions they asked us to add is to make those distinctions. So that's what we did, and that's where I put it. It's really a cosmetic thing because the ballot's exactly the same, but for whatever reason we have to actually say what kind of ballot it is, so that's what we did.
Okay, well, I guess the only thing I'd like to point out to the public is that it's 2-sided. There's a few ballots on the back, but also the constitutional amendments are on the back and the front. Don't just do one side and done, flip it over and do both sides.
Absolutely, good point. Yes, it is a very full ballot, front and back, and it's a Republican ballot. Even the nonpartisan ballot will go front and back because of the fact that we have English and Spanish on both. So, yes, good point. And we will be training our poll workers to remind everybody of that fact as well.
All right, members of the board did receive this ahead of time by email. Are there any other questions before we vote to approve the ballot?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. I'm not sure it's valid or not, but this is a primary ballot that we're approving, but for the special election, it's actually the general election. Do you want to clarify that a little bit for the public, Michael?
Absolutely. Yeah, so with this being a special election, along with the fact that we have the constitutional amendments and the referendum questions, everybody that is an eligible registered voter in Lebanon County can vote in this election. So the special election shows not only the candidates, but the party that they belong to. Normally in a primary, it is set up that you only see candidates of the party for what you're registered. That is different with this special election. There are 4 candidates and their parties are listed below their name, and you can vote for anybody. It does not matter what your party affiliation is.
Thank you.
I think on all of these, it's in the lower left-hand corner, the senator election. That's consistent the way it
Yes,
looks.
I tried to keep it in the same spot. I really didn't want it down there. I wanted it kind of in the middle, but because of the length of the ballot and getting everything on, I really had no choice but to put it. But it is consistent on every ballot. It is on the bottom left-hand corner, right after the instructions.
All right, good clarifications.
I'll make
Anything
a
else?
motion to approve the ballot as presented.
I'll second the motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the ballot for the May election as presented by Mr. Anderson. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the ballot as presented indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ballot is approved, sir.
Excellent, thank you. So the plan is for those to probably start being mailed out Monday. We just have some testing and things we want to do with it, and then Monday those will start. We have just under 6,000 people in the queue that have already signed up for the mail-in ballots, so those will start getting mailed out, like I said, on Monday. Okay, so the next item would be constables. So in the past, we have always treated constables as any other candidates on the ballot, and therefore, if they were not able to work at their precinct on election day. So other directors have questioned this, and all counties seem to kind of do it a little bit differently. So I felt like we probably should bring this before the board and have a board decision on how we want to treat it. I did have Dave Warner give us his legal opinion on it. I did forward that to you a couple of weeks ago. Basically, you know, I hate to paraphrase what he says, but you know, it's kind of silent in the code on how it's treated. Counties treat, a lot of counties treat them as poll workers, election workers, and therefore allow them to work on election day as long as they do not campaign or solicit for that fact. Constables have to stay 10 feet away from the voting area. Anyway, they're basically there for justice or for keepers of the peace. And so, you probably were able to read Dave's opinion on that. It seems that a lot of counties are moving towards allowing them to work as long as they're not campaigning in any way and they're adhered by the guidelines as far as how far away they have to stay from the voting area. I felt like this should be a board decision on if they wanted to keep our previous practice or if we wanted to treat them more as our election workers and, allow them to work on election day.
All right, your thoughts, board members.
Commissioner Litz, go ahead.
Are you sure? I don't want to. Sure. A long time ago, in my mind, accepted the fact when I read the law that constables are peace officers at the polls, and they are the only ones who are allowed to be there all day. The police may not, the National Guard may not, because it's intimidating to the voters. That being said, the constables are in uniform, and the law also says in 2671 and 3060 that they should be outside of the compartment where the voting is taking place. I have seen constables inside that area. The only time they are to go in there is if there is peace to make, that they have to do their job. But otherwise, they can be at the polls working, but outside of the compartment where the election is physically taking place. That is my belief, and I believe everything I've read from both Michael and the solicitor supports that.
All right, do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I will make that a motion, sure.
All right. Do I have a second for that motion?
Commissioner, can I make one comment before you vote on that?
Sure.
Just because our interpretation of that is my interpretation of that is a little different, and I'd be more than happy to have Dave clarify if we would like, but we enforce 10 feet. So we do allow them to be inside as long as they're 10 feet away from the voting area. So like here at the municipal building in the lobby, he normally is inside, but he is back by the door away from where the check-in and at least 10 feet. So I just want to clarify that if you're going to make a motion, if you're going to allow them to work the whole inside or outside item, or if we're going to enforce 10 feet, which is what we have done in the past.
Well, I think the visual is what people find intimidating because of the uniform. And so I don't know if a panel could be up that he could sit behind or something of that nature. But again, he should technically be outside of that room. But if the weather's inclement, I understand for warmth or out of the sun, etc., it might be necessary to put him inside, but he should be behind a panel.
Well, I think, Michael, and you visit all of the polling areas. The polling areas that I'm familiar with, you can be inside the building, but not in the area where, specifically where the poll books and the voting take place. Is that correct?
Yes, pretty much all of them. There are some that are small that would require them probably be outside of a door, but most of them you're able to meet the 10 feet threshold and still be inside. You know, so to answer your question, yes, most places have enough space that they wouldn't have to be outside. Most of the time we request, because the law is really not on our side on this, is electioneering to occur outside. And for the most part, that does happen. But we have always kind of allowed the constables to be inside because they're the best to see if something happens. If they're outside and something happens inside at the polling location, you know, they're not going to know about it if they're outside.
Yeah, the only reason we're actually discussing this, if I'm wrong, certainly correct me, is because up to this point, if they were on the ballot, they couldn't be there at all. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what I'm requesting is, are they allowed, my request is, are they allowed to work on election day if they're on the ballot?
So that's the only thing that we need to clarify, unless we want to go above and beyond what we've been doing in the past.
That's all I need. I would prefer to keep it at 10 feet and just let, you know, just would like to know if they're allowed to work on election day if they're on the ballot.
Then I suppose we need a different motion. Someone like to make the motion to?
Again, I respectfully disagree that the 10 feet is adequate. It should be a visual barrier because that's what the law is talking about, that the uniform is what intimidates.
The law says that?
I remember
Or
reading
you
that
say
a
that?
long time ago, unless it changed, but that is my understanding of the law.
Commissioner, could we possibly just address the far as working on election day? And then what I could do for you is to try to get clarification from Dave Warner, our solicitor, on that specific issue, and then present that to the board. I will be at the next board meeting for the publication notice. We could address that issue at that point. Would that work?
Yes, I can agree to that.
I'm able to save you some time with that, Michael, because I don't think I can support having a constable behind a panel. And the 10 feet to me is, I'm just not, in terms of intimidation and so on, I don't believe, I think it's a presence is a good thing so that people feel that there is someone there if something should go awry. So I don't want that person hidden behind a panel. So I would not be seconding the motion anyway under those circumstances. So that's where I am on that. But
Well, let's address what Michael is requesting clarification on. We need a motion just to allow or not allow those those that are actually candidates to be allowed to work just the same as.
I based on Michael's promise to get back to me, I would agree and make that motion then and withdraw my other one.
Right. Do we have a second then, Commissioner Phillips?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to allow the constables, even those that appear on the ballot, to work at the polls as they have been permitted to work in the past, not being candidates. So all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion, we got that clarified, Michael, and that carries.
Thank you. Last but not least is how we want to handle the ballot drop-off box that was installed outside of the municipal building. What I need from the board is to know, first of all, where it is, if that's acceptable, and then second of all, the availability of that ballot box. Just a couple of things to make sure for housekeeping, to make sure everybody's aware is The ballot box is bolted to the pad that we have put down there. It's not going to go anywhere. I went out and attempted to try to move it. It's not going to go anywhere the way they have it secured to the ground at this point.
And it's a poured pad. It's not just one of those decorative
Correct.
squares.
Correct. The other issue is, another fact I think is important is that we will be, and I believe we already have it, the camera that will be on the ballot box. This is going to be a separate camera that will be strictly just for this purpose. That Bob Dowd has secured, that will be on the ballot box, so that there would be 24/7 surveillance, no matter how long we have it available to the public. So I think that's to note. During business hours, I know I've talked to Lieutenant Seifert regarding sheriff deputies. During business hours, obviously they're there for security purposes. They're not always outside. I know the one day they weren't, but they were sitting inside, with the door monitors. Other days they are outside. So there is some security with that as far as them being there to make sure that the ballot is secured. They are not election workers. They're not up on the election code. I do not expect them to know, certain things as far as making sure people are putting the correct amount of ballots, those types of things. But just for security purposes, I think it's important to note that they are back there with the door, at least providing some security during business hours. I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, let me know.
All right. With that said, would you like to have some discussion before we actually put a motion? Because I'm not sure what the motion might be. So let's.
I don't mind making a motion if you entertain,
Okay.
it, Chairman.
That's fine.
My motion would be along the lines of during business hours that we have the box outside where there is some monitoring and some security in addition to the surveillance camera. But after we close our doors, we have that box taken inside the door so that no one can mess with it. And also the fact that it should be emptied at that point, and those by personnel from the election office, and those ballots removed, so there is not anything in that overnight. That would be the lines along the lines that I'd like to see us handle that box.
Okay. Do I have a second to the motion?
Was that a motion?
Yes.
Oh, no, I can't second that motion. I'm sorry.
Doesn't mean you have to vote to approve it. All right, for the purpose of discussion, I'll second the motion. Now we'll accept discussion.
Yes, thank you. When I look at that box to address the motion, it's not practical to pick it up and carry it inside. It's just not. It's bolted fast to a concrete pad that is very thick, and you're just not going to get into it. I mean, it was designed specifically for the purpose of ballots. And similar to a mailbox, it has a very thin slot where the ballot can be inserted. It's just not practical to bring that inside. Also, as was mentioned, it is under high definition surveillance video. And quite frankly, because it is similar to a mailbox, they're available 24/7. So mail-in ballots are in mailboxes all the time. And it's illegal to tamper with the mail, and it's illegal to tamper with ballots. So the final point is, these boxes were made for law-abiding citizens. Do we want to assume and treat everyone like a criminal? I don't think so. We've taken beyond the call precautions to make sure that we have a secure ballot box because it was designed for that, because it's under surveillance 24/7 by the video camera. And we have law enforcement officers in this building all the time that can be there in 2 minutes. If the observers in 911 see somebody out there, I mean, we can respond immediately. Even, the telecommunicators that are monitoring all these cameras, my goodness, I think that it is important to treat people with respect and know that mailboxes are out there all over the place. They can use those if they want. They can go to the polls if they want. They can come into Michael's office and vote if they want. And for the people who work a lot of jobs because they have to support their families, this is another option because, quite frankly, not saying anything bad, except that the mail gets delayed. This way they can be sure it's in there. Michael, I know, will check that box every morning and before he goes home every night. He was down there more than that when we had the little box during the presidential election. But it's the right thing to do. We're supposed to make voting easy for people, not repress the vote. And to do otherwise would be repressing the vote.
Okay, may I respond? My
Sure.
would be that by definition, these are mail-in ballots. So I believe that is an expansion of making it more accessible. And also that they can't put it in the mail at all the different places throughout the county that there are mailboxes and post offices. And that it's a federal offense if you mess with a mailbox, which I don't believe it would be a federal offense if you mess with our box at the courthouse because of it being an official mailbox that, are customary throughout the county. So those are two things that I'm leaning on, that we are expanding and making it more accessible. Those people that you're saying that might be a hardship, they can just go to the mailbox right out front of the courthouse and put it in there. And it's not going to prohibit anybody from voting. In my mind, they still have those other options that we talked about.
Well, any mail that goes in a mailbox goes to Harrisburg before it comes back to Lebanon. The only way to avoid that is to hand deliver it to the post office during their business hours and ask them to deliver it directly. But you can't do that with a regular mailbox. It is the most efficient way for people to drop off after hours in that secure mailbox out front. It's like a mailbox, even though it's not a mailbox. I mean, every precaution has been taken, I think, to serve the public and give them, without any more suppression, the right to vote. We should have that there 24/7.
Okay, can I have my turn now? I see the impracticality now that we have that box bolted fast outside, and my preference would have been to have some other kind of box and have it inside and have it available only during business hours. I know, Commissioner Litz, you're very busy. I'm sure you're not going to be monitoring that security system 24/7. So we have no way of knowing whether someone's monitoring that or not. So at the very least, in my mind, if we're going to use that ballot box and it's going to be secured outside, it needs to be locked from deposits outside our normal business hours. You're right. All the mailboxes, everyone has a mailbox at their home or at their apartment of one kind or another. So that's the simplest thing. And there certainly are the U.S. Postal Service large mailboxes located all over the county in every community. So it's certainly not hampering someone from voting. This is a mail-in ballot. That's what we're talking about, mail-in ballots. So obviously the way to convey that is through the mail. If you wait until the last minute and you need to get it into the courthouse, get it in during the business day, and either put it in that box during the business day or take it directly to the voter office. But certainly that is not going to hamper anyone from voting. And as far as trust, if we could totally trust everyone, we wouldn't even be talking about this, and we wouldn't even be considering the possibilities. So I certainly think that we need to have it only available during the business hours.
Jamie has his hand up, Mr. Chairman.
Jamie?
Yeah, I just want to just talk about maybe some practicality of this. It's clear where the vote's headed, and that is for it to be only accessible during business hours. The box that you purchased, however, is the size of a postal mailbox. And I'm not sure who's going to be taking it up and down those stairs every day to bring it in and take it out. And as it was mentioned, it's been affixed with the assumption that it was going to be an outside available box. Would it be acceptable that if the intent is to make it only accessible during business hours, that the opening simply be blocked? I'm sure between voter registration and building and maintenance, they can devise a way to just close off that opening, and rather than having someone try to bring that thing. I mean, it is it's almost the size of a person, so it's a little unwieldy.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that I actually had mentioned that in my last discussion, that at the very least we need to make sure that it's not accessible, even though it's still there, that we need to have something to close it off, because there would be literally nothing to prevent someone out there harvesting ballots and show up there and put 25, 30, 50 ballots in that mailbox at 2:00 in the morning. And even if we're monitoring it, you'd think we're going to get clear enough photos and going to be able to identify. And how do we identify which ballots were deposited along with the other ballots? It opens a whole can of worms as far as voter fraud is concerned. And although we work very, very hard in Lebanon County to secure our elections, that doesn't mean that the potential for voter fraud isn't here in our county. So we need to take every precaution to safeguard our elections. And I think, Commissioner Litz, you always say that is one of our main tasks, is to safeguard elections. And I think that's what we're trying to do here.
You're absolutely right that our job is to safeguard elections. And again, that is such a small opening. You cannot put a lot of ballots in there at one time. They would jam, you couldn't get them in. And you would have, again, 911 telecommunicators have a screen up there, and they would be monitoring it. And we have detectives and police, the city police are here. I just can't see that all the security we have at this building and the high definitions, quite frankly, I have a Ring and I get really good quality photos even at night with a Ring, and that's like a $99 gizmo. So anything that comes through from the 911 center is going to be even better quality. You're going to be able to tell lots of details. And, I think that our job is to serve the public. And the biggest call that I got when we had the little box out, people would come in, before work, after work, and we were closed, and they'd say, I couldn't find the box. And then I would explain it's brought in every night, but that was when it was like a milk box versus a full big mailbox. So now that we have the full big mailbox that's properly secured and properly monitored, there's a tiny little hole for the ballot to go in. There's no reason we can't have that available 24/7. Again, it is a mailbox of sorts. It just doesn't have a postage stamp on, but it is still illegal to tamper with a voter registration, and we can prosecute to the fullest extent of the law if there is someone who is messing with our ballots. But I think that our citizens in Lebanon County deserve the respect to know that we don't distrust everyone and that they are good, upstanding people and will follow the rules.
Well, we're not distrusting everyone. We're assuming the fact that there are some dishonest people out there. And again, our most important role here as members of the Board of Elections is to secure the election in every way possible. So, you know, again, you haven't addressed the possibility that if, in fact, we do observe on camera and someone came there and stood and put 15 or 20 ballots in one right after another in the narrow slot, how we would separate those ballots from the other ballots that are in the box. So there is no solution for that. And that in itself puts us in jeopardy. So
Well, I think that it could be addressed.
Okay.
Did you see, Michael, did you see the chat question from Laura? Is there anything in the election code that either denies or allows a 24/7 box availability?
No. And just before a motion's made, Chairman, if you don't mind, just a couple clarifying issues. Yes, the box would be emptied at the end of every day and checked at the beginning of every day to make sure it is empty, wasn't somehow tampered with. And then obviously we would have the video evidence if we would need it. The other request would be if the motion is for business hours is to allow for the box to be available until 8 p.m. on election day. That is the deadline for individuals to allow them to drop them off here in our office. So I would like to know if we could have that available to 8 p.m. if you do restrict it to business hours.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
amend my motion to accommodate the 8 p.m. request till on election day, and also that we produce some kind of a mechanism for preventing the putting ballots in after business hours until opening of business the next day.
Do I have a second for that motion? All right, I will second the motion. Then for clarification again on election day, it would be monitored and left unsecured for the insertion of ballots until 8 p.m. until the closing of the polls. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Hi.
Motion carries 2-1. Anything else, Michael?
Thank you. Just real quick, May 3rd is the last day to register to vote or to make any changes. This is still a primary election, so as we discussed a special election, everybody can vote. However, if you want to vote for a candidate for a specific party, you would need to make sure you're registered to that party for races, countywide races, state races, local races. The last day to apply for the mail-in absentee civilian ballot is Tuesday, May 11th by 5 p.m. And of course, they have to be returned by Tuesday, May 18th, which is the primary election day. And last but not least, I do want to put a plea out there for the fact that we still need poll workers, especially judge of elections. We lost upwards to about 12 to 13 judges from the 60 precincts that we had. So we are working to try to get those positions filled. But to anybody that is interested, please either contact my office at 717-228-4428, and we will let you know more information. But just want to put that plea out there. They're always looking for poll workers, but specifically for judge of elections in specific areas. I know Judy is actually making calls this morning, but when I came in to this meeting, we need someone in Jackson Township at the Township Building to be a mentor to take over there, Myerstown. I know we had an opening there, and we had one in Lebanon City. And hopefully we'll have the final polling place locations for you by the next meeting.
All right, Michael, and again, we certainly want to thank you because you do an incredible job, and take your job, you and your staff take the job of handling elections very seriously, and you do an outstanding job. So we thank you for that. Is there anything else to come before the Board of Elections this morning? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the Board of Elections?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a motion and a second. We stand adjourned.